Ejiofor was in his favorite hotel with his side chick, Uche, when his wife, Nanai, called to inform him that her water had just broken. She was in so much pain and pleaded with her husband to come take her to the hospital. But Ejiofor was not ready to leave the arms of his side chick. "Can't you walk to the hospital?" he asked Nanai, angrily, as he hung up the call to attend to Uche, who insisted on having a full body massage before he leaves. Nanai was left with no other option but to walk to the hospital, which was 30 minutes away. With each step that she took, Nanai wished for her life to end, as the pain was too much for her to bear. She arrived at the hospital and almost slumped at the entrance as the nurses rushed her to the emergency ward. The doctors, after a thorough examination of her, decided to wheel Nanai in for an emergency surgery, as her baby's heartbeat had dropped significantly. Nanai had already gone in for surgery when her husband arrived at the hospital. "Where is my wife?" Ejiofor asked the nurses, who informed him that she was in surgery. This revelation stirred Ejiofor to anger, as he began to insult his wife, calling her a lazy woman. "Is it not her mates that are pushing out babies?" he asked angrily, as the nurses all looked at him with disgust. "What kind of a useless man is this?" they said amongst themselves, as they wondered how a beautiful and calm woman like Nanai found herself with a man like this. They watched as Ejiofor continued to belittle his wife, calling her lazy for deciding to undergo surgery to birth their baby. He revealed that women who opted for surgery instead of natural birth were weak and spineless, and were not worthy to be celebrated. That is why their children never sum up to anything meaningful in life, he said, as people looked at him like a fool. Just as he was talking, he received a call from his mother, who called to know how Nanai was doing. Ejiofor could not help but continue his rant with his mother, voicing his displeasure at the fact that Nanai opted to go in for surgery instead of giving birth naturally like a strong woman. "Can you believe the weak woman you allowed me to marry?" he asked his mother, who rebuked him and said that if Ejiofor believed Nanai was weak because she decided to give birth through surgery, then she too, his mother, was a weak woman because she brought him forth into the world through the same surgery. Ejiofor could not believe his ears. He stood there, confused and speechless, as his mother's words sank in. He had never imagined that the very woman he revered and idolized had gone through the same experience as his wife. His arrogance and ignorance had been laid bare for the whole world to see, and for the first time, Ejiofor felt so stupid in his own eyes. Just as he stood there stunned, the doctor emerged from the operating room to reveal that his wife had just given birth to a bouncing baby boy. Ejiofor could not hold back his joy. He asked how his son was doing, and the doctor assured him that his son was fine. Ejiofor cared less about his wife, as he didn't even care to ask how she was doing. How selfish can a man be? The nurses whispered as they criticized him for not asking after his wife, who just survived a major surgery. A few minutes later, his son was handed over to him, and Ejiofor could not contain the joy that he felt. He quickly called his side chick, Uche, who arrived at the hospital to meet his son. Nanai was then wheeled to the recovery room to recover from her surgery. Her entire body began to shiver as she battled with postpartum chills. Nanai could not wait to be united with her son, as the thought of him filled her with so much strength. After a few hours, her baby was brought to her, and Nanai, in that moment, forgot all the pain that she felt. She spent a few days at the hospital and was finally discharged to go home. The excitement she felt whenever she looked down at her son was something she could not explain. She was wheeled out of the hospital and met her husband's driver, who assisted her into his car with the help of the nurses. The ride back home was so beautiful, as Nanai could not take her eyes off her adorable son. They arrived home, and Nanai caught sight of her husband, Ejiofor, holding hands with his side chick, Uche. She watched in anger as they walked towards her, their eyes set on her son, as they acted as though she was invisible. Nanai could feel her anger rising. She watched as Ejiofor handed her baby over to his side chick, Uche, who had a wicked smile on her face. Nanai stood there frozen as Ejiofor told his side chick to name his son in front of his wife. Nanai could hear her heart beating through her chest as her husband's side chick named her own son before her eyes. "I'll name him Odinica," his side chick said, as she looked up at Nanai and smiled. 1,000 emotions flooded Nanai's mind as she watched her son in the arms of her husband's side chick. Her son, her precious son, was being taken from her in a symbolic gesture that stripped her of her dignity and motherhood. The pain she felt in that moment overshadowed the piercing pain of the stitches in her stomach that bore the evidence of her undying love for her son. Nanai, unable to withstand the humiliation, approached Uche to take her baby from her when Ejiofor looked her in the eyes and warned that if she ever lays her fingers on his son, he would send her back to her wretched family in the village and make sure that she never sees her son again. Ejiofor told Nanai that he would never allow a woman who grew up in a wretched village to raise his precious son. He said that Uche, his side chick, was more qualified to raise their son because she was more polished and exposed than Nanai. He told Nanai that he was only allowing her to live in his house because of the respect he had for his mother, and that the day Nanai makes it difficult for his side chick, Uche, to raise his son, he would send her back to the village. Nanai could not risk being sent away. She knew that Ejiofor would not hesitate to send her packing from his house, because he had no use for her now that she had birthed his son. So, she watched as her husband's side chick cradled her precious baby in her arms. Her husband, Ejiofor, cared less about how she felt because he only married her to please his old mother, who needed a grandchild. He went out that afternoon and returned with a brand new car for his side chick to thank her for agreeing to raise his son. Nanai watched as her husband's side chick jumped up in excitement as she checked out her brand new car, which was worth millions of naira. Nanai had never felt this used in her entire life. She remembered how Ejiofor pretended to be in love with her just to get her to marry him. He continued with his pretense until he realized that she was finally pregnant. It was then that Nanai got to know that Ejiofor got married to her because his mother was desperately in need of a grandchild. Later that night, Ejiofor ordered Nanai to move her things out of his bedroom to the guest room downstairs, as Uche was moving into his room with him. Nanai's heart broke as she watched her husband lie on his bed with his mistress as they laughed at her. Her heart broke into a million pieces as she packed all her belongings into the guest room downstairs. Nanai stayed up all night crying as she soaked her sheets with tears. Her husband was in the hands of a woman who not only came to break her home, but also succeeded in taking her son away from her. Nanai could hear them vividly from her room, as their bedroom was right above hers. With each thudding sound, Nanai's heart shattered, as she could not bear the thought of her husband with another woman. Suddenly, the cry of her baby traveled down the hallway into her room as she jumped out of bed and ran towards the cry. Immediately, she remembered her husband's stern warning and stopped, as she could not jeopardize her chances of living under the same roof with her son. Sad and disappointed, Nanai returned to her room, broken, as she knelt down on the ground to pray. Her heart was so heavy, and she did not know what else to do but pray. "Father, please help me," she cried aloud as she poured out her heart to the Lord, asking for a way out. She begged the Lord to reunite her with her son, who they had forcefully taken away from her. She also asked for a friend who would comfort her in times like this as she lay on the floor, defeated. By morning, Nanai woke up to realize that she had slept on the floor all night. She headed for the kitchen when she caught sight of her baby, alone, on the couch. Nanai looked around, but no one seemed to be in sight. So, she snuggled him close to her chest as she thanked God for answering her prayer. Nanai spent a few minutes with her son when she suddenly heard Uche approaching. She quickly dropped him back on the sofa and rushed out of the living room, like nothing happened. Nanai could not contain her joy, as the few minutes she spent with her son felt like a lifetime with him. She sat on her bed with her phone when she received a strange text from an unknown number. It read, "I had a dream last night where I was shown your number and asked to contact you. I am Kechi. Can I get to know you?" Nanai was so full of excitement as she watched her prayers being answered one after the other. She replied to the text quickly and spent hours chatting with her new friend, Kechi, who seemed to live in a different state. Nkechi was such a good friend to her, keeping Nanai company and always willing to listen to her rants. They shared their experiences, and soon Nanai found herself happy again. For days, Nanai looked out for opportunities to hold her son in her arms. She missed him so much and was feeling so low, so she decided to text Nkechi to ask what she could do, and Kechi advised her to plead with Uche to allow her to carry her son for some minutes. Nanai, heeding her friend's advice, approached Uche and pleaded with her to allow her to carry her son for a few minutes. But Uche refused, saying that she could not risk Odinika growing up like his village mother. She told Nanai that her role in the child's life was to ensure that he grew up prim and proper, devoid of any local trait that his mother might have. Nanai could feel her heart sink. She could not believe that her husband's mistress was preventing her from holding her own baby. A woman who had never been pregnant in her entire life or knew what it meant to carry a child for 9 months and birth him afterwards. Nanai watched as her baby began to cry. He recognized her voice and cried, hoping that she would carry him. His cries shattered the deepest part of her heart as she sang his special song to him, a song she formulated when he was still in her stomach. And Uche was moved by this, as she agreed to allow Nanai to carry her son for a few minutes. However, this could only happen after Nanai cleaned the entire house and cooked some food for her to eat. Nanai jumped at the opportunity because she was willing to do anything to hold her son in her arms again. She cleaned the entire house and even cooked some food for Uche to eat. However, by the time she was done, her husband, Ejiofor, had returned. Nanai retired to her room, sad, as she received a message from her friend, who asked how she was doing. Nanai narrated all that happened to her friend, who comforted and assured her that one day she would hold her son in her arms forever. These words comforted Nanai as she went to sleep, thinking about the day that this would finally become a reality. The next morning, Nanai came out of her room to realize that her son was all alone in the living room. Uche seemed to have gone upstairs and left him asleep on the chair. So Nanai picked him up quickly as she held him close to her chest. Tears dropped from her eyes as she missed her son so much. "Don't worry, one day we will be together forever," she said to him as she rocked him to sleep. Nanai was so engulfed in the moment that she didn't notice that Ejiofor had just returned. "What's going on here?" Ejiofor asked angrily as he took his son away from her. "How can you touch my son with your filthy hands?" he said to Nanai as he gave her a dirty slap on her face and ordered her out of his house. Nanai fell to the ground and began to plead with Ejiofor, who did not heed her cries. He pushed her out of his house and warned her never to return. Nanai stood outside for hours, pleading with her husband, who refused to let her into the house. Seeing that it was now getting late, Nanai decided to return back to the village because she knew no one else in the city. She arrived at the village and decided to pay Ejiofor's mother a visit the next morning. Ejiofor's mother was so fond of her and could not believe all that she had been through in the hands of her son. She apologized to Nanai and promised to talk some sense into her son. Nanai returned to her father's house broken. She could not eat or sleep for days and was in a state of despair. Her heart ached for her son, as she felt a void that nothing on earth could fill. Her family tried to console her, but nothing was able to soothe the pain of being separated from her child. Later that night, Nanai had a terrifying dream, where she saw her son in the hands of some strange men. She woke up terrified and decided to take the first bus to the city to check on her son. She arrived at Ejiofor's home and met his front door open. Nanai's heart began to beat as she searched the entire house for her son, who was nowhere to be found. She searched for Ejiofor and realized that he was fast asleep in his room. "Ejiofor!" she screamed at the top of her voice as Ejiofor jerked out of his sleep. "What are you doing here? And how did you get into my house?" he asked Nanai, who asked him where her son was. "What kind of a question is that? And who gave you the right to ask about my son?" he replied to Nanai, who did not look amused by his response. "I have searched the entire house, but no one seems to be around," Nanai said to Ejiofor, who told her that she must be blind to not have seen anyone in the house. He left his room and walked around the house, searching for his son and mistress, but noticed that the house was truly empty. Uche's car was no longer in the driveway, and Ejiofor wondered where she could have gone without his permission. "Maybe she took him out for a stroll," he said, as he grabbed his phone and tried to dial her number. Ejiofor scrolled through his contacts and realized that Uche's number was no longer in his phone. All her messages, pictures, or anything that related to her were gone, and Ejiofor began to panic. He searched through the house frantically, calling out for Uche and his son, but there was no response from them. Nanai stood there and watched as Ejiofor paced from one end of the room to the other, murmuring to himself, "Uche cannot do this to me. She was just here when I fell asleep. Where could she have gone? And why is her number no longer on my phone?" He asked himself repeatedly as he picked up his phone again and tried to find her number. "Where's my son, Ejiofor?" Nanai demanded, her voice filled with anger and a mix of fear. "I don't know." Ejiofor shouted back, his eyes wide with confusion and worry. "She was home when I fell asleep," he said as he tried to wrap his head around what was happening. Nanai felt her heart sink into her stomach. She had a dreaded feeling that something beyond her control had happened. "Where does she live?" she asked Ejiofor, who revealed to her that he had no idea where she lived. "How can you say you do not know where your side chick lives?" She looked at Ejiofor, who told her that they always met at a certain hotel in town. "How irresponsible can you be?" Nanai said, as Ejiofor suddenly became calm. "Where have you kept my son?" Nanai screamed aloud as she fell to the ground feeling so defeated. "I should have been here," she said, as she blamed herself for not being around to stop her. Ejiofor could not understand how he found himself in this kind of a situation. Uche, his favorite mistress, had never given him any cause for concern before, so he trusted her with all of his heart, not knowing that she harbored some evil plans in her mind. "Where did you first meet her?" Nanai asked Ejiofor, who gave her the address. "Just pray to your God that I find my son, or else you would have me to contend with Nanai," said to Ejiofor as she hurriedly left their house to go in search of her son. She arrived at the address and asked around for Uche, but no one seemed to know who she was. Nanai spent hours on the street, describing Uche to anyone that she came across, but no one seemed to know who Uche was. Just as she was about to leave the location, Ejiofor parked his car next to her and asked her to hop in. He told Nanai that he remembered a certain boutique where he always took Uche shopping. He said that the owner of the boutique seemed to know who Uche was and that she might know where she lived, so they drove off together to the boutique. When they arrived, they met the woman, who was shocked to see Ejiofor with another woman. "Please, I am looking for Uche," he said to the woman, who revealed that she hadn't seen Uche since the last time that they came together to do some shopping. "Do you know where she lives?" Ejiofor asked the woman, who seemed shocked to hear such a question from him. "Are you trying to say that you don't know where Uche lives?" she asked Ejiofor, who seemed so ashamed of himself. Nanai pleaded with the woman calmly to direct her to where Uche lived, and the woman said to her that she never got to find out where she lived. However, she told Nanai that one of Uche's friends lived close to her boutique. She directed them to her house, and Nanai thanked her for her help. They arrived at her friend's house and met her friend, Uju, who claimed that Uche left her house in a hurry this morning without telling her where she was going. Tears dropped from Nanai's eyes as she wondered where Uche could have gone and if her son was safe. Was she with a baby? Nanai asked the young lady, who told her that Uche was not with any baby when she came. Nanai's heart raced as several thoughts ran through her mind. "Can we have her number, please?" she asked the young woman, who scrolled through her phone and realized that Uche had deleted her number from her phone. "How is this possible?" she whispered to herself as she continued to scroll through her phone for the number. "Let me guess. She deleted the number off your phone, too?" Ejiofor asked the young woman, who seemed shocked not to find the number on her phone. "What is going on here?" The young woman asked Ejiofor and Nanai, who told her that Uche absconded from their home with their newborn baby. The young woman opened her mouth in shock. She could not believe that Uche would ever do something like that in her life. "I know where her mother and daughter live," she said to them as she gave them directions to their house. They drove on a lonely road for some hours. The tension in the atmosphere was so overwhelming that Ejiofor found himself sweating profusely in his air-conditioned car. They arrived at the village and asked some villagers for directions and were directed to Uche's mother's house. Ejiofor could not believe his eyes. All the while, he thought that Uche came from a wealthy home because of all the lies she told. Little did he know that she lived in a dilapidated house with her old mother. The house they lived in was nothing compared to Nanai's house in the village, which looked way better. Nanai looked at Ejiofor and asked if this was where the woman who he wanted to raise their son lived. Ejiofor felt so embarrassed as they approached the door to knock. An old woman answered the door, and Nanai asked to see Uche. The old woman stared blankly at her as a young girl walked out to reveal to them that her grandmother was deaf and dumb. She revealed that she had not seen her mother, Uche, for 3 weeks. Another dead end, Nanai said, as she felt her blood boiling. Is there a place you believe we can find her? She asked the young girl, who told her that she knew so little about her mother. However, the young girl said to her that her mother always made sure to be home on the first Sunday of every month to bring her grandmother's medications. She told them to come on that day, as they would most likely meet Uche at home. This was over a week away, and Nanai knew that so many things could happen within that time. Thank you for your help, she said to the young girl as they returned to their car. Just as they were about to drive off, they received a call from an unknown number. It was a woman who said that she knew where their son was. Can you meet me right now? She asked Ejiofor, who asked for an address. Hello, 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 Ejiofor said as he looked at the phone and realized that the line had disconnected. Dialing the number again, Ejiofor saw that the number was now switched off. Who was that? Nanai asked, and Ejiofor told her that it was a woman who called to say that she knew where their son was. She tried to give us an address when the line suddenly went dead. Call her back quickly, Nanai said to Ejiofor, who told her that the number was now switched off. Can this day get any better? Nanai screamed out in frustration as tears began to pour down her face. It's all your fault, she said to Ejiofor. They returned home, and this was the longest night that they had ever had. Sleep eluded them as they sat next to their phones, hoping to receive a call about the whereabouts of their son. By morning, they heard their phone ring, and Ejiofor picked up the call and realized that it was a man. If you want to see your son again, make available 100 million naira in cash. I will call you to tell you where you would drop it off, and your son would be released to you. To, the line went off. Who was it? Nanai asked as Ejiofor revealed to her that the people were demanding a ransom. How much? 100 million naira. Nanai opened her eyes in disbelief as she tried to process what she was hearing. What are we going to do now? She asked Ejiofor, who began to think deeply. I think we should involve the police, Nanai suggested to Ejiofor, who said that the people warned him that if he ever involved the police, they would kill their son and return his dead body to them. Nanai quickly abandoned the idea of involving the police as Ejiofor picked up his phone to call his account officer at the bank, asking how much liquid cash he had in his accounts. 200 million, sir, the account officer said, as Ejiofor ordered him to make arrangements for 100 million in cash and said that he was stopping by the bank in a few minutes to pick it up. Ejiofor picked up his car keys and headed straight for the bank. He picked up the money and returned home to his wife, Nanai, who could not stop crying at the thought of her baby in the hands of some dangerous kidnappers. Nanai was so distressed and needed to speak to someone. She contacted her friend Kechi, who, for some reason, had not been responding to her messages for the past week. She watched as her whole world crumbled before her eyes as she became so inconsolable. They waited for some hours and received a call from an unknown number with instructions on how the money would be dropped off. Who is there with you? The man on the other end asked as Ejiofor revealed to him that it was only his wife. Give her the bag and the phone. The man instructed as Ejiofor handed the phone to Nanai. Do you know how to drive? The man on the other end of the phone asked as Nanai revealed to him that she could drive. Good. Meet me at the abandoned house at the outskirts of town alone, and bring the money with you. 30 minutes, or your son will be dead. To. Nanai opened her eyes in terror as she ran out of the house with Ejiofor's car keys. She got into the car and drove as fast as she could. Ejiofor was shocked to realize that his wife could drive. All this while, he never gave himself the opportunity to know his wife, who seemed not to be local at all. He watched her drive off as he prayed for the exchange to be successful. Nanai drove as fast as she could with the money. She arrived at the abandoned house at the outskirts of town and parked on the side of the road. Her eyes moved from left to right as she waited for the picker to arrive. A few minutes later, she heard a knock on her back window and stepped out of the car with the money. The masked man took the money from her and told her to drive down the road. She would see a basket on the side of the road with her baby in it. She should pick up her baby and head straight home. Nanai got into her car and drove for a few minutes. She saw the basket and parked next to it. Lo and behold, her son was inside the basket. Nanai hugged her baby tightly as she put him into the car and drove straight home. When she got home, Ejiofor's eyes lit with excitement to see his son safe. Nanai, overwhelmed with emotions, went into her room to cater to her son, whom she had not seen in a very long time. As she sat on her bed with her son in her arms, Nanai could not help but thank God for bringing her son back to her. She could not believe that she survived the most horrifying days of her life. She held her son so close to her heart as she received a surprising text message on her phone. It was a credit alert of 70 million naira and a message that read, "I know you will not be expecting this money. It is me, Uche, and I have sent you 70 million naira to take care of your son and yourself. When your husband called me to raise your son and even name him in your presence, I was so bitter because I could not believe that a man would be so callous as to treat his own wife in such a way, knowing fully well that she just had a baby. I had to play along and show you some form of hatred, so as not to make my plans obvious to you. At the same time, I tried to be your friend by disguising myself as Nkechi. Sorry I stopped replying to your messages for a week now. I didn't want to give myself away mistakenly. I heard your prayers on the night that I moved into your husband's room and decided to be that friend that you asked God for. It hurt me to hurt you, but I had to do what I had to do, because if I left Ejiofor, I am sure that he would get another woman, who might not be as nice as me. So I had to stay to see how I can be of help to you. All the times you saw your son, unattended in the living room, it was me who deliberately wanted you to have some time with him. Sorry about the last time. That got you kicked out of your husband's house. I felt so terrible, as I didn't see it coming. Once you left, I tried to convince Ejiofor to send you some money, but he refused, saying that you were not deserving of any penny. This broke my heart, as I decided to plan the whole kidnapping situation to force some money out of him. I am sorry for kidnapping your baby and putting you through so much stress. I would also like to apologize for all the times that my actions made you feel less of yourself. Ejiofor does not deserve a woman like you, and I am sorry to have contributed to your pain. I decided to take his money to give to you so that you can start up a new life, away from him. I know it is a risk, and I am willing to face the consequences of my actions if I am ever caught. Please use this money to take your son away from him, because Ejiofor is not a good role model for your child. I wish you the very best, and I am sure that you would make the right decision for your son and yourself." Nanai stared at the message in disbelief. She could not believe that the very woman who had caused her so much pain had also given her the means to start up a new life, away from her wicked husband. Overwhelmed with emotions, Nanai hugged her son tightly and whispered, "We are going to be okay, my precious child." She decided that staying in Ejiofor's house was no longer an option for her. She needed to create a safe and nurturing environment for her son, away from the toxic presence of his father. The next morning, Nanai made a few phone calls and managed to secure a small but comfortable apartment in a different city. She packed up her belongings quietly, not wanting to wake Ejiofor up from sleep. She snuck out quietly with her son, leaving Ejiofor all alone in his big house. He woke up a few hours later to find his house empty and a note that read, "Ejiofor, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I have taken our son and left because I can no longer live in the toxic environment you have created. Your betrayal, disrespect, and neglect have left deep scars that I cannot heal while being near you. I stayed as long as I did because I hoped you would change, but I see now that you never will. Our son deserves a life filled with love, respect, and stability. I am determined to provide that for him, even if it means leaving everything behind. This is the best decision for both my son and myself. Perhaps one day, you will understand the pain and anguish you have caused and find it in yourself to become a better person. I forgive you from the depth of my heart, but we cannot be together. Goodbye, and take care of yourself, Nanai." Ejiofor sank to the floor, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. He realized too late the full extent of the damage he had caused. Nanai was gone, taking their son and any hope of reconciliation with her. That was how Nanai and her son started a new life in a new city, away from her traumatic past. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should never look down on anybody in life. Treat people with respect and dignity, regardless of their background. Do not focus on superficial things in life, because not all that glitters is actually gold. Be kind to your spouses, and be sensitive to their emotions. Do not deceive people into marriage because of your selfish reasons. Marry for the right reasons, and learn to treat your spouse with utmost respect. At the end of the day, how you treat others is a reflection of who you are. I hope you enjoyed the story.